Welcome to Chaos, Courage and Coffee, the podcast for anyone who's felt like on the outside I'm holding it together, but inside I'm struggling.
And we do it with honesty, heart, and just enough coffee to get through the day.
Oh, hello, Brett. How's it going?
Good morning, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm very, very well, and I'm excited to hear what we're going to talk about today. I'd love to know, what are you thinking?
I was actually thinking about goals and goal setting.
Okay.
I think that sometimes we get this a little bit wrong. I think people set big lofty goals and they're not necessarily sure how to get there, or they aim too short. They aim for this little thing and it's like, well, I've done that. What do I do now? So I think goal setting.
I read a book by a guy, I can't quite remember his name, but he's a Canadian astronaut. And one of the things that struck me, and we don't necessarily need to follow this path, but he said if you have one big goal in life, say to get gold at the Olympics or to be an astronaut, you're putting a lot of pressure on one thing, and you're either going to win or you're going to lose. You know, you're going to achieve it or you're not going to achieve it. So what I took from that is, yes, we can have some big lofty goals, but let's have lots of goals and also to have some smaller goals so that we can achieve. Because for me, it's about achieving.
I like that. The reason I like that achieving is because it allows us to do something that we don't necessarily do well, and that is celebrating our wins. And I think one of the problems with goal setting is it's fine to set goals, but what do we do when we achieve them? And I think it's important to, and we're probably jumping well ahead here, but I think we need to celebrate the wins. And sometimes it's the little things, it's the reward. And I think this is where we lose out on a lot of our goals. I agree that we need to have lots of different goals. I'll take a step back to what you were saying. Lots of different goals. It is important to have the one big goal. And then what are all the little steps that we need to get there? And I think that's where sometimes we get a little bit wrong. It's we either set a really big one and we don't know the steps to get there, or we don't break it down into sizable bite-sized pieces that we can actually achieve one step at a time, or we set a really easy goal. And once we've done that, well, I've done it. What do I do now? We're not looking at the next one. And I've had conversations with people around both of these issues. It's either too big, I don't know how to do it, or it's too small, I've done it. What do I do next? Well, what is the next evolution of that? And so I think the reason I bring it up is because, as I say, I think it's something we don't necessarily do well. And I think we can help for everybody, perhaps listening, we can help break it down to how do we do this effectively so that we can achieve success.
Well, see, here's what's interesting, because it's all about how we feel. And I was going to say, I do set small goals, but it was interesting when I was hearing you talk because you were breaking down the bigger goals, say, in chunking it down into smaller goals. But I have small things that have like zero long-term purpose. And so then you might say, well, why have you got those, Vanessa? What's the point? And then we circuit back to what Brett said, because it is all about the feeling. And it's because when I've done those, I can say, well done to myself, and I reward myself. It doesn't have to be part of the bigger thing. It can just be that. And I feel accomplished. So quite often, I'm going to give you some little tips here from Vanessa that may or may not work for you. But here's what I do in the day when I get up in the morning and I have some things I need to get done in the day. They can be big or small. And the small ones, and sometimes I always put some that I just want to do, like it's not a have to do. And then I reward myself for doing it. And quite often I might start with the small ones because then I'm starting on that forward momentum. and I bribe myself. Is that the right word? I don't know what a bribe is, but that's another whole topic because that comes up in parenting. But I'm allowed a cup of coffee when I've got that done. Simple things like that. So there's rewards, and that's maybe another whole topic, and it's something to talk about. But it's noticing when you've achieved something to get that forward momentum, not necessarily big things, and it can be part of the big thing. Because it's the feeling that we want when we say well done to ourselves. And as a side note that we could come back to another time is it doesn't matter if we don't achieve it. Okay, so we'll carry on talking about goals and achieving them today, I think. But remember, it's not all bad if we don't achieve it. They're having a go because it's about the feeling. So every time we're talking about goals, I wonder if we need to remember what the point of them is. Maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's one thing to set a goal. And as you say, we don't necessarily need to achieve it. On our way to that goal, and we've talked about this before, if we decide we want to, I think we use the expression or the analogy of an island, going to an island in a boat. And it's okay not to get to that island because something else comes up that might be more attractive or is more important to us, or we realize that while we thought we wanted that, we don't actually want to achieve that. We want to achieve this other thing, or realize the underlying purpose of the original goal isn't actually going to serve us. And so we need to modify, change it, and do something different. But I think you're right. It's the reward, even for the little ones, like having a cup of coffee, or for some people, it might be a piece of chocolate, not the whole block, just a little piece, square. All right.
Yeah.
Might be, I've done this thing, I can have my reward now. I've done this thing. It might be getting up and going exercising, and you set a goal to exercise 5 days in the week. So on the 5 days, once you've achieved your 5 days, whether you do that on day number 5, Monday to Friday, or whether you do it on day number 7, you actually get your 5 days of exercise on the Sunday before we restart on Monday, say. Doesn't matter, you've achieved 5 days, you can still get that reward. And make sure you relate the reward back to the goal. Because I've done this, I now get this. And I think that's important, and we don't necessarily do it well. And I know I'm guilty of it myself. I don't necessarily reward myself when I've achieved certain goals that I set out for myself. And so that's why I think it's important that we discuss it, because we aren't necessarily good at celebrating our wins or rewarding ourselves.
I think this is the vital bit that I see so many people miss. Like, even, and I may have used this analogy before, if you're someone who's depressed and you struggle to get out of bed, if you get out of bed, or when you get out of bed, do you say, God, I did it, well done me? Or do you give yourself a hard time and go, yeah, well, look, everybody gets out of bed. What's wrong with you that you find that hard? You know? It's so important. We miss rewarding ourselves. Those words. Imagine you're your own parent. What would you want your parent to say to you? And maybe it does come from our parents, and from our childhood and the training of when you've done something good, what was said to you as a child? What do you say to yourself? Because I didn't have parents who would congratulate me and say, well done. So I did it. I don't know where it came from. I just learned to do it for myself because no one else was going to do it. So don't wait for others. And I think this is another point we quite often do. We want our parents to be proud of us or whatever. You want your friends to say, well done. They don't even notice. You have to say to them. And a lot of us don't want to say that. So parent yourself. Do it for yourself. Be your own best friend. Well done for doing that. Acknowledge it even. Wow, we miss that. I see people missing. They don't acknowledge what they've done.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I've been guilty of it myself. It's that recognition, that self-recognition, the self-reward, the being your own champion, your own cheer squad, if you like, however you want to, whatever term you want to put on it.
Mm.
It is so important when we have those wins, and it is completely individualistic. what's easy for one is not necessarily easy for the other. And I agree. I was speaking to a veteran recently who he'd been stood down from work because he had complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And he said, I can't do anything. I just feel like I'm failing at everything. I'm failing at life. I'm failing in my family. And I said, what do you want to do? And he said, I just want to stay in bed all day. I said, did you get out of bed today because you had to? He said, yes, I did. So you've had a win. You've done something that you needed to do. Did you put food on the table for the children? Yes, I did. Well, there's a second win. Did you get the kids off to school? Well, they largely did it themselves. But what does that tell you? You've raised children that can be independent and they can get themselves off to school. So that's a previous life win that's now paying dividends for you now. And so all of these little things, he was giving himself such a hard time around not being able to do these things mentally or emotionally, but he was actually doing other things that were still successes in his current condition.
That's your point, Brett, in his current condition, because what we do is we compare to others, and it's not apples with apples. They're not in our situation. They haven't lived our experience. So what for me might be really, really hard can be easy for someone else, and they don't even acknowledge it. So what that means is everybody listening, you have things you've achieved that you need, and I'm going to say that's quite strong, but you need to celebrate them. You need to acknowledge them at the very, very least, because you've done it.
Yeah, I agree. We're all achieving things. We started this podcast when we started this podcast. Hey, let's do a podcast. Yeah, let's do it. But our celebration, I think, I don't know how many episodes we're in right now, but the fact that we're turning up every week and we're getting these recordings done and we're publishing them. And I know for anyone who's been down this journey, you'll know how hard this is, how much background work there is to actually get this podcast produced and set up and running. And, we're sort of taking it for granted now. We're still finding our feet a little bit. We're still early in the process. But I think our win is that, we're so many episodes in and we're getting it done. Well done us. And I feel anyway, that every episode we publish is another win. It's another one that's like, yes, we've done another one and those sorts of things. So it might seem simple. It might be for those people that have the resources, the money, they've been doing it for a while and they've got the backing and sponsorship and all those sorts of things. It might be really easy for them. They turn up, they do the recording, but we've got to fit this in around our lives. We have to do all the editing and the scheduling and all those sorts of things around other work commitments, coaching, those sorts of things. And so it's not necessarily easy, but it's a win because we're getting it done. And I think that's the simple things. As we said, we've talked about somebody just getting out of bed. That's a win for them. And that needs to be recognized, and they need to champion themselves and congratulate themselves for just achieving that little bit. For somebody who's got a certain level of success, getting out of bed, of course you get out of bed every day. But for some people, it's not that simple. For some people, that is a real struggle for them.
I think what it is, so if you're someone who you get out of bed and you don't even think about it, right, that's not necessarily an achievement for you. But what I've always done is I've always pushed myself a little bit. So if the things are easy and they just happen and I don't notice them, that's great. That's just where I'm at. We don't do comparison. What's a little bit hard for me? And quite often I always, set myself something a little bit hard. It pushes me. And when you were talking about exercise earlier, and I've got to strengthen my knee, so I decided I have to go biking and I'm going to go on a Sunday morning. And I just literally have to make myself do it because I'll think, as I start, I go, God, this is going to be hard. And it is going to be hard. And I'll tell you why. Because if it isn't hard, there's no point me doing it because the whole point is to get fitter. Therefore, I have to make it hard. But I've sidetracked a little bit because what I want to say is push yourself a little bit because then you can say well done to yourself. And don't compare yourselves to others. I am not going to compare this podcast to the people who've been doing it for years because we could become negative. I could look at other people's podcasts and start going, oh, Brett, we're not doing this and we're not doing that. And you know what will happen if we do that? We'll stop. But because we're looking at the positives and what we are doing and the progress we're making, we're keeping going, right? So we will achieve more and more and more because we keep going and we congratulate ourselves on every step that we achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys don't see it, but we have conversations outside of this, and we're doing this thing, doing that thing. Yes, this is a win. And we say to each other and we say it to ourselves, yes, it's a win because we've done this thing, we've done the next thing. And so I think it's important for everyone else. And I know we've gone away from goal setting right here and goals, but I think what we're talking about is we had a goal to start a podcast. And I know we're going back to this podcast. And so it's all about us today, folks.
Yeah, because I was going to talk about our list because I was going to bring it back to goals. And do you remember the day when you said, right, let's create a list of what you have to do to launch a podcast? And you sent a list and I was so overwhelmed. I was like, seriously? Like, we've done so much already. And so that's why goal setting comes in, because it's like, right, remember our goal, right? What else do we need to do? And I tell you what, that list could have been enough to stop a lot of people, because it was like, oh my gosh, we've still got all of this to do. And then when it's goal setting, what you do is you break it down. And I noticed years ago, another tip from Vanessa here. If something stays on your to-do list for a long time, there's a reason. Okay. I used to have a to-do list. I did it all wrong. Okay. But that's for another day. And it used to be really long. And then I'd always look at the previous one and rewrite it. And there'd be these ones that always sat at the top. And eventually I thought, why are the same ones sitting there? What's going on? And I worked out why they were sitting there, because I didn't know where to start. I didn't really know what I needed to do. So that's when I first worked out that you need to, the term is chunk it down, but you need to break it into steps. So now I have little reminders of things I need to do, and I always make sure I'm clear of what the first step's going to be. Okay, I've moved house. I need to update addresses. That sat there for a little while. Why is it sitting there? Well, the first step is, which addresses do you need to update? Aha! First step is not, this isn't the task now. It's not change addresses. The task is, what addresses need changing? And you can keep breaking it down. So that's my tip. If your to-do list has something that's stuck on it, the problem is you just don't know what the first little task is. Start small.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's our podcast to-do list. Our podcast launch list was really important. Yes, it was overwhelming, but every time we could tick something off and say, yes, I've done that. Yes, I've done that. Oh, you've done that one. Great. I was going to do that next, but you've taken care of it. Well done. And we could see the achievement over time for each item on the list as it got checked off. It was success. It was moving us closer to launching this podcast. And that was exactly what we needed. And I understand, as you say, it's overwhelming when we look at the big thing. And this is important. And it relates back to exactly what we were talking about before, having the big goal, launch a podcast, and all of the little steps, all of that checklist, all those little steps to get there, and rewards along the way. Just that, well done. Oh, thank you for doing that. That's recognition of effort. Whether it's from ourselves or somebody else, it doesn't matter. We need to be doing that.
Well, then let's summarize. So we've created a lot of awareness around goals, and do you know, it's interesting. It's a topic that sometimes I love to hate, because people talk about SMART goals and that just winds me up. And I love that we didn't mention it until now. Anyway,
You brought it up, not me.
well, I can't believe it. We nearly made it through without saying it.
But is this something that we need to discuss really quickly? People talk about SMART goals. So, and there's different ways, there are different words people use, but they all essentially mean the same thing. But they need to be specific. So we mentioned, starting our podcast, that was our goal, to launch a podcast and run this podcast. It needs to be measurable. So how do we know we're doing it? Well, we're actually publishing episodes online. Is it achievable? Well, yes, we've got the technology and we've got the knowledge and those sorts of things, so we can put it out there. Is it realistic? Well, yes, we can do this. We have been. You guys are evidence. You're listening to us. Is it time bound? Yes, we set a date to actually do our launch, and we knew what we needed to get done to get there. So we had all of those things. But there's a couple of extra details that I've learned along the way that people don't necessarily consider. And somebody presented this to me a few years ago. Not just SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, but smarter. Is it a smarter goal? So ecological. Is it good for me, good for you, good for the planet? And then the last one, and this is the one we have been talking about today, is the reward. When we achieve it, what is the reward for achievement of that goal?
Well, and on that note, let's say the reward is that we get to help you guys. We have created awareness and we get to help you guys to help yourselves. That to me is a huge reward.
Yeah, I think doing this, both of us being coaches, it's about being able to share and just being able to help other people. You guys can take, whoever's listening to this can take whatever you want from all of these episodes, all of our messages, all of the talk that we do. It's up to you to take what you need, take what you want, take what might work for you and apply it to your own lives. And if you've got questions, reach out, send us a message, put a comment on the podcast or on our socials, whatever the case may be, and let us know what's going on.
And on that note, remember to like and subscribe because then you'll get notified every time the new episode is out.
Absolutely. So we're here to help. We're here to help you. If you've got questions, give us some feedback. What do you think? What are we missing? Those sorts of things. We're here to serve, basically. That's what coaching is about. It's a life of service. So let us know.
Help you.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. I think this has been a good one. Perhaps didn't quite go as I thought it might, but I think we've covered some good ground anyway. And I think this one's a little bit shorter, which is okay as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Brett. I'll see you next time. And come check in again on us next time, guys, and listen to our next episode.
See you next time.
Thanks for being with us today on Chaos, Courage and Coffee. Remember, you're not alone and you don't have to figure it all out at once. What part of today's conversation stood out for you?
This podcast is about showing up in the mess, not waiting until it's all sorted out. If today helped, share it with someone else who might need it too.
And if you're navigating your own version of chaos, we'd love to hear about it. Leave a comment, message us, or join the conversation.
We'll be back soon with more honest talk, less pressure, and just enough courage to get through whatever's next.
See you next time on Chaos, Courage and Coffee.